Hey everyone, it's Dr. Hayes, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Dramione. Well, we're not. It gets mentioned. It's there. It's there. However, as you may have guessed from me mentioning Dramione, which is of course from Harry Potter, this video is also going to discuss J.K. Rowling, as it also says in the title. So we're going to discuss J.K. Rowling at some length, although this video isn't all the way through about her. It's about another author called Julie Soto largely. However, I don't need to tell you watching what horrible things she had said about the trans community. I'm not going to be repeating any of that in this video because it's disgusting and I don't want to, but I guess, you know, trigger warning in general for this video for J.K. Rowling, even though I'm not going to be reiterating any of the awful things she has said. So the situation we're going to discuss today involves the author Julie Soto. So prior to this situation, I'd never heard of them, but from their website they seem to be a romance author. So her previous books are Forget-Me-Not and Not Another Love Song, to name two. I'll link her site below so you can go and check her out. And according to their Goodreads, they have an average rating of 4.03 stars with 130,000 ratings. Their books do indeed seem pretty popular, pretty well received. However, what we're discussing today involves their new book, Rose in Chains, which is the first in the Evermore trilogy. So let's read the blurb. The war is over, the dark forces have won, and the hero who was supposed to save them is dead. Captured as her castle is overrun by the enemy, Bryony Rosewood knows that the world as she knows it is changed forever. The dark forces of Bombard have won, and her people, the Eversons, face imminent servitude, imprisonment or death. Her brother, fated to be heir twice over and unite the warring kingdoms, is dead. Stripped of her mind magic and her freedom, Bryony and the other survivors are quickly auctioned off to the highest bidders in an auction, and as the heir's apparent sister, she fetches the highest price. After a fierce bidding war, she's sold to none other than Tovin, a high-ranking Bomardson, and her long-time and ill-fated infatuation. Scion of a family known for their cruel control of heart magic, the Hers are ruthlessly ambitious, and Bryony knows they will use her however they can to further their own interests. Yet despite the horrors of her new world and the role she must learn to play within it, all is not lost. Help and hope may yet arise in the most unlikely of places. So at this point you're probably thinking, okay Hayes, what's the problem? Okay, yeah, it's about magic, but J.K. Rowling doesn't own writing magic or writing fantasy more at large. So what's wrong with this? Look at the cover. This is the cover. That is quite firmly Draco and Hermione, or rather Tom Felton and Emma Watson. Like, there is no two ways about it. Whether you ship Dramione or not, that is quite firmly them. So if you're unfamiliar / have never been outside, I'll give you a brief rundown, but I'm assuming most of you are familiar with Harry Potter, so please skip to the time shown on the screen. So Dramione is the ship name of Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger from the Harry Potter series, which is of course, and also simultaneously unfortunately, by J.K. Rowling. The story is about a boy named Harry whose parents were murdered by a dark wizard, and he gets sent to Hogwarts when he's 11 years old, which is a magical high school, and he goes to school and learns all the skills he needs to defeat the Dark Lord, Voldemort, when he's old enough. He has two best friends, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. Now, Ron and Hermione are a canon couple. They do get together, like, right at the end of the series, but Ron isn't really important to this video. However, Hermione is. Hermione is nicknamed the brightest witch of her age, and she is super duper intelligent. However, she is also something called a Muggleborn, which means that neither of her parents are wizards, yet she is still a witch. But they have an in-world offensive term for this, which is mudblood. And one of their classmates, Draco Malfoy, calls Hermione this name, and Draco is a Slytherin, which is usually seen as the evil house. You know. Anyway. And his dad is Lucius Malfoy, who is a Death Eater, aka he's in a cult who loves Voldemort, and Voldemort hates Muggleborns, as does Lucius, as does Draco, and while Draco, during their time at Hogwarts, bullies a lot of people, Hermione is a particular target of his. So that's the canon backstory of Draco and Hermione. They don't like each other. Despite this though, people shipped them, because people really love enemies to lovers romances. Now, personally, I do indeed love Dramione fanfiction. I have read a lot. I couldn't even tell you the number I have read, largely because one, I read so much of it that I don't even know what number might be accurate, and two, I'm also not prepared to embarrass myself that much by trying to guess what high that number might be. I can't do it. So I love Dramione. I still remember finding out about it for the first time. I started writing fanfiction after the first season of Sherlock. I absolutely loved Sherlock when it was originally airing, but season 2 was taking forever, so I was like, fine, I'll do it myself. And then on one of the Harry Potter pages I followed on Facebook when I was like 14, for reference I'm 28 now, someone posted a Dramione fanfiction they'd written, like a link to it on like, I think it was on fanfiction.net, and I cannot describe to you the absolute disgust I felt upon reading that. I was like, no. So I was already in the fanfiction space, but to me fanfiction was for changing the plot or advancing the plot whilst you're waiting for the next season to air. It wasn't for changing relationships. I was very new to the fanfiction scene. I'd literally probably been reading it for maybe like 6 months or something. Very new, and I only was exploring Sherlock, nothing else. However, even though I was completely and utterly horrified by this, I went back a week later and I read the full thing out of curiosity, and I became obsessed. Now, going off the blurb of Rose in Chains, it seems to be one of the popular Dramione tropes, because yes, the ship is so popular that they have their own tropes. So this one seems to be losing the war trope. So the hero, Harry, dies, and the survivors on the light side, or Harry's side, are sold as basically slaves or servants or whatever to survivors on the dark side, on Voldemort's side. So Harry dies, Hermione doesn't, although in this version they're related, they're brother and sister in this book. They lose hope without Harry, they lose the war, and she is sold to Draco or the Malfoys as a family more in general. Although, just for reference, my personal favourite Dramione trope is the head boy, head girl one. I think it's kind of unpopular now though. It was super popular when I was a teenager, not so much now though. Which is why I wrote one when I was 14. So personally, given my knowledge and love for reading Dramione fanfictions, clearly by the blurb, this has been adapted from a fanfiction, I would have worked that out without having seen the cover or being told it was adapted from one, but also by the cover, very clearly Dramione, and the author has also confirmed it was adapted from a Dramione fanfiction they wrote. Rose in Chains is one of the several 2025 books being adapted from Harry Potter fanfiction, and more specifically fanfiction centred on the Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger ship. So like I said, it's confirmed, no two ways about this, Rose in Chains, confirmed Dramione fanfiction. So at this point you're like, okay, that's all the background, what's the controversy here? And there are a couple of points to it. However, the rush to publish books based on the Dramione ship has raised legitimate questions about whether traditionally published fanfiction hurts the art form and the community surrounding it. Although the characters and settings are altered enough to avoid copyright issues, the monetization of the hobby creates a complicated grey area, ethically speaking. At the end of the day, large swathes of these stories are still pulled from previous published works, which could result in authors pushing back against fanfiction as a whole. Fandom is also a refuge for many, and having corporate entities make it for content threatens the sanctity of that space. Personally, as someone who writes fanfic and is also a published author, I do disagree with this. All fiction, fanfiction or otherwise, is based or inspired by something. Now obviously I understand fanfiction is very based on something, like for example my Harry Potter fanfictions would take place in Hogwarts, it'd have all the characters who are in the books and the films in there, often a similar plot, or mainly just change the relationships really. But to me, if someone is willing to go through and change everything and truly create their own world and truly make it their own, which it seems Julie Soto has done, I'm not sure, I haven't read it personally, but as the blurb says, the main character is stripped of her mind magic, the family she's sold to has heart magic. Those things don't happen in Harry Potter, they aren't present in that world. So just in general, I don't think this point is personally a problem to me. To me, if you're willing to go away and take the time to make it your own, then I think that's more than fine. And I also feel that this specific comment in the article is completely disregarding that all books and TV shows and films and a lot of media has been these days inspired by something else, and usually indeed someone else's work. Like the fantasy novel I'm currently working on is in part inspired by the Chronicles of Narnia, the speculative novel I wrote last summer is inspired by Unwind by Neil Shusterman and The Handmaid's Tale. And it feels a bit odd that this is being brought up now, when I definitely could be wrong, but I personally don't remember all of this happening when 50 Shades of Grey came out, which, if you don't know, originally was a Twilight fanfiction. However, there is more to the article, more to this controversy. There's also the quality to consider. Fanfiction is popular because readers want to explore established characters and settings in further depth. Removing those familiar elements of a story takes away from the charm of the work in the first place, raising questions about whether it's worthwhile. I won't lie to you, as I already said, I'm an avid reader on fanfiction, also of traditionally published novels as well. I have been reading fanfiction like that for over a decade now. Like I said, I started when I was like 14. I'm 28 now. I've been this way oh my god, like a decade and a half. To me, fanfiction isn't good because of the ship it depicts in a world I'm already used to with characters I already know, Dramione or otherwise. A lot of the fan fiction is seriously high quality. Not all of it, I know it's not, of course it's not. Some of it is terrible, including what I used to write when I was a child. But a lot of it is really good. So I'm not really sure that's quite a valid point in my opinion. Of course, feel free to disagree. However, those 2 points that we just kind of talked about are kind of minor in comparison to the main controversy behind this book, Rose in Chains. These are all debates cropping up thanks to new releases like Rose in Chains, though the July Romantasy book is also getting criticism for a more sinister reason. Many are uncomfortable with its indirect ties to Harry Potter and thus J.K. Rowling. Readers are concerned that giving these stories attention is indirectly platforming Harry Potter. The marketing and conversation surrounding the titles are pushing the Dramione angle. Although J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter's publishers aren't making money off these Romantasy books, and the authors have not explicitly expressed support for either, the marketing and conversation surrounding the titles are pushing the Dramione angle. This keeps attention on Harry Potter, which may lead to further sales, and certainly helps keep the story alive. Given Rowling's anti-trans rhetoric in recent years, there has been a push to deplatform the author and boycott anything that gives money to the Harry Potter franchise. It's understandable then that many members of the LGBTQ+ community and their allies are unhappy about books like Rose in Chains and Alchemized drawing attention back to it. Now, as I already said at the start of the video, I really do not want to go in and read out the awful things J.K. Rowling has said because I think they're absolutely disgusting. 2 of my really good friends are trans. I absolutely do not want to repeat anything she has said, but please know that what I think that she has said about the trans community is absolutely disgusting and in general is incredibly, incredibly harmful. And I'm also cis, so I'm not really sure what I could personally contribute to that conversation other than I think it's gross, but please know I do disagree with J.K. Rowling's views. And again, in a similar vein, I'm again not sure I can respond directly to this section of the article as I am cis, but personally I do think this brings up an interesting argument that I basically want to get your opinion on. Where do you stand on this? On one hand, we have people who are against the cancellation of Julie Soto, or the cancellation of this book kind of more specifically, like for example in this video from TikTok.
So Julie Soto is being cancelled. Okay, I want to talk about something messy, so if you are here for hot takes with no nuance, this is not the video for you. First of all, my brother-in-law is trans. I've had very deep, meaningful conversations with him about these issues, but I do not speak for him, and I certainly do not speak for a community. Opinions are singular. You can have the same alignment of values as another person, but you do not speak for them. This is about the traditional publishing of Rose in Chains, The Irresistible Urge to Fall in Love with Your Enemy, and also Alchemized. Books that originally started as Dramione fanfics but now have been rewritten, restructured, and traditionally published as original works. There's a lot of talk out there in the world that buying these books is the same as supporting J.K. Rowling. I understand where the emotion comes from. Her views are vile and she has seriously harmed the trans community. But here's where I disagree. It's not the origin of a story that defines it, it's what you do with it. These books have been reimagined. New names, new lore, new IP. The authors aren't paying Rowling. They're not riding on her coattails. They're leaving her behind. And let's be honest, nothing in this world is 100% original anymore. Every single story is built on the bones of something else. What matters is how you reshape it or reclaim it or evolve it. Now, yes, these publishers definitely should have done better. The fanfic angle, that should never have been a part of the marketing. It was completely unnecessary and caused drama that could have been avoided. But now we are seeing consequences that cross a line. Julie Soto has now been removed from the roster of a book convention purely on the basis that her released book has fanfic origins. Not for harm that she has caused, not for ties to Rowling, but for writing a story that evolved from something she once loved but left behind. That's not activism, that's moral panic. While we're on that topic of conversation, let's also have a conversation about consistency. Because you're boycotting authors with rewritten fanfics, and yet I've seen a few of you rave about the Beetlejuice sequel, when in that series there's a convicted child offender. And you're also still loving the Lord of the Rings films, which were brought to you by Harvey Weinstein's company. That's not justice, that is comfort-based cancellation. I want to be very crystal clear here. My space is a safe space, especially for marginalised voices, but I have zero time for performative activism. If you jump on cancel bandwagons without knowledge, education, or consistency, please block me. And also, disagreement is not oppression. People are allowed to have a different opinion from you. I've literally seen people weaponize the phrase, "this space isn't safe for me," just because the person involved disagrees with you. You don't like being challenged. You feel discomfort. I get it. But people are allowed to disagree with you. And being disagreed with is not the same thing as being harmed. A brilliant creator who spoke on this recently is Bookish Jono. Please go check out his video. He absolutely nailed this conversation with calm and compassion. Let's start engaging critical thinking, but also raise up trans voices, call out real harm. But let's stop tearing people who actually do the work instead of confronting systems of power.
Now, personally, I definitely agree that they absolutely should not have marketed this book as a Dramione fanfiction. I think it should be marketed as dark fantasy or dark romantasy and let it stand on its own. And I also definitely think the artist for the cover shouldn't have drawn characters that are basically just Emma Watson and Tom Felton. Like, it's very close. Like, that's a massive likeness. Like, could they get sued for that? I don't know. Like, have they asked their permission? I really don't know. And it's also true as well, that this creator says in the video, that Julie Soto has pulled out of RomanceCon. With RomanceCon, the presence of Soto among dozens of authors, including the one who wrote the Harry Styles self-insert book, led to some pushback from readers. Having Soto at the event was seen as a continued endorsement, implicit or otherwise, of Rowling's work. Not only that, but it was seen as an act of financial support towards Rowling through the ongoing promotion of her work. Many criticised Soto herself, claiming she was happy to stay silent on Rowling's bigotry to sell her fanfiction. Others saw it as part of the wider issue of how fandoms and fan-related activity can't be separate from the wider product that it's latched onto. Can you truly be a staunch queer rights ally and still put money down for something that will only further elevate the profile of a woman paying to hurt the community? Many writers responded to the issue by pulling out of RomanceCon as an act of solidarity. Emily B. Rose said on Instagram and Threads that she'd no longer be attending the event because the continued silence is so telling, and I've had a queasy feeling in my gut for 2 days now that I need to listen to. Katie Duggan also pulled out, writing, "While I was, and remain, hopeful that complete separation from JKR's IP is possible, sitting around and waiting for them to make the right choices didn't feel like the right choice for me anymore." Adriana Shu declared that she would not attend the event. They do not cancel Julie Soto's appearance. Eventually, RomanceCon announced that they and Soto had mutually agreed that she will no longer attend the event. As of writing of this piece, Soto has not said anything on her own socials about the situation. So that article that I've just read from, which is by Kaylee Donaldson, will be linked down below, and they also had a really in-depth response to what's happening with Julie Soto, which I really want to read out to you because I just thought it was so well thought out. Does a Harry Potter fanfiction, one where Rowling doesn't get any money from its sale, buoy the IP and help to keep it alive even as its author descends into mouldy madness? I would argue yes. With Soto's book and the other 2 Dramione fanfics released by publishers this year, the connection to the source material has been crucial in their marketing. The authors talk about being fanfic writers in interviews. The cover art for one book is practically Tom Felton fan art. HP fans are helping to promote this book online through the enthusiasm for the fics. Emma Watson and Felton's images have been used widely in such fan promos. Make no mistake, Julie Soto, her publisher, and the industry at large want you to know that HP is alive and well, and you can get a saucy new take on your favourite racist and his bullying victim through these books. This issue is perhaps more complicated than, say, the obvious problems around HP fans still buying Rowling's books, going to the theme parks and seeing that terrible play. That's money that goes directly into her pockets, than to her new fund designed to financially bolster transphobic campaigns in the UK. You can easily point at Felton or John Lithgow and be like heinous loser behaviour in them signing onto HP projects, because that's an active show of support to a bigot. Their payday is tied to hers. With fandom stuff, the waters are muddier. Fandoms were, for a long time, hesitant to make money on their efforts. The idea of filing the serial numbers off your fanfiction and making it original was condemned out the gate. 50 Shades obviously changed that. Fan-related works and merch is in a similar territory. Often it's not endorsed by the estates but quietly tolerated because it's good not to piss off your own fans and it's good unpaid promo in the long term. Maybe you're not paying for Rowling's books anymore, but getting stickers from Etsy and cosplaying at a convention is still a sign on some level of where your loyalties lie, right? Yes, it's perfectly fair for some HP devotees to want to enjoy the books they prize so much without funding hate. It's possible to do so, but I've become increasingly unsure that it is so when you're still bragging about your allegiances through stuff like published fanfic and fandom. Like if you go to, say, San Diego Comic-Con and you're dressed in Hogwarts robes, how do you expect people to respond? Do you think they'll assume you're one of the good fans and not someone they should avoid? Rowling has made it perfectly clear that she sees financial support of her work as a direct endorsement of her views. Being ignorant of that in 2025 is a choice. I often get asked how HP fans should react to Rowling. They don't buy any of the new stuff anymore, but they still want to be fans, and many fan creators are queer, so we should support them instead, yes? There's logic and earnestness behind this mentality. I'm not disputing that. But as a queer Scot who has watched Rowling decimate my country's LGBTQ+ community through her well-funded hate campaigns, then had to walk through Edinburgh and see tourists giddily take selfies on Victoria Street in their Hogwarts robes, I have zero patience for this mealy-mouthed middle ground. Let Harry Potter die. Let it become irrelevant. Let it become such a financial drain and its presence on bookshelves lowers the value of surrounding titles. Only then will a hell of a lot of us feel safer. It shouldn't be harder for you to let go of a children's book series than it is to let queer and trans people know that you're in their corner. At the very least, you shouldn't be paying hard cash for fanfiction. Surely on that issue, we can agree. So like I said before, the full article will be linked down below for you to go and read, but honestly I think they raised some really solid points, so I think you should go and read the full thing. So I guess in conclusion, I don't really have one. In general, personally for me, feel free to disagree, but turning a fan fiction into a published book I think is amazing as long as the author has taken the time to go through and truly make it their own. However, I definitely think it raises an ethical dilemma when said fan fiction, now novel, is based on the work of someone like J.K. Rowling. I would think of anyone who admits to writing a novel that was once a fan fiction of, for example, a book written by Neil Gaiman, would be subject to the same scrutiny. It wouldn't just be J.K. Rowling, it would be other problematic authors as well. Basically, I just think the whole situation is very interesting, and now you have basically all of the information. I would love to know what you think, particularly if you are trans, since Harry Potter does still have a huge LGBTQ+ following, despite what J.K. Rowling has said, and also, you know, continues to say, which is also just vile. But anyway, that is all the information. I'd love to know what all of you think, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!